Hi, everyone.
Hello, Jalpa. Hello, Sangeeta.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, I think we will kick off at 3:30. Niveda, you'll transfer the questions from Q&A for us, right?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, welcome everyone to this session for International Women's Day. We'll just give 1 minute for people to join and then kick off. Are you seeing my slides or the presenter view? Can someone just let me know in the chat?
No slides yet, Jalpa.
Cool. All right, very good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And I am moderator today for this session. And before we kick off, let's pay our respect to the country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the ISACA Melbourne chapter acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend respect to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples today. I'm Jalpa Bausar, and I'm also joined by Rit Dahia and Niveda, who are ambassadors for She Leads Tech Melbourne, and they will support us in this session for any questions and tech-related queries. Here are some housekeeping. So at the end of the session, we are aiming to take some questions from all of you, providing the time permits. And this session is live, and it will be.
Jalpa, did you mean to have the slides on? We don't have the slides on.
Sorry?
Did you mean to have the slides on? We can't see the slides.
Oh, you can't see? Let me share again. Can you see the housekeeping slide now?
Perfect.
Cool. And for any questions that you may have, put that in the chat for us, and we'll take them at the end. So let's dive into the topic today. Australia is, as we know, a very multicultural country. And according to Australian Bureau of Statistics, in November 2019, 34% of Australians over age of 15 were born overseas. Almost half of the Australians have at least one parent who was born overseas. So when you look around at work, this cultural diversity is reflected in many of the roles. And Australian Professionals of Colour is a community organization that helps professionals maximize their potential in the workplace and build a more culturally integrated and intelligent corporate Australia. So we are here today to talk about some of the unconscious bias around professionals of colour. In the absence of sheer statistics around people of colour, we may use term culturally diverse people interchangeably, and I'm cognizant of that. So I will lay out a few different scenarios or questions for our panelists involving challenging scenarios that professionals of color face in their workplace or career in general. hoping to get different perspectives on how they would deal with those situations, or advise you how to provide someone in that situation. So that's the theme of the discussion today. What happens when you look beyond the color? Without further ado, let me introduce you our panelists today. Starting with Sangeeta. Sangeeta is an entrepreneur running her business Jumpstart Studio, helping early age entrepreneurs turn their idea into brilliant business reality. She is also a co-founder of APOC, Australian Professionals of Colour. Naishad is a qualified career counselor and a professional member of Career Development Association of Australia. Naishad is also certified life and work design coach, brings a different perspective to career change and transition. He is also co-founder of Cards Against Insanity and host of the longest running LinkedIn live show, Career Care Package. A bit more about me and how I fit into this topic. I'm a cybersecurity specialist during the day, and most evenings I spend my time mentoring, contributing, or helping cause I'm associated with One in Tech ISACA or APOC or Women in Cybersecurity, sharing my experiences, knowledge with other professionals to help them get ahead in their career. I mainly do this to pay forward to the community, so the privileges or help that I didn't have or necessarily received, I want to provide that to the next generations. So here goes the first scenario. It's around cultural intelligence. So as we know, Australia is a very multicultural country, and this number of people born overseas were about 10% in 1940, and it's rising year on year. So more people from cultural background we see in workplace every year. It's important for high-performing teams to be culturally aware and understand how cultural intelligence play a role. For example, there is a strong business case for Asian capability in workplace, which this means is, this is also called Asian century, where 50% of world's population lives in Asia, and its consumer demand market is $10 trillion annually, which is similar to size of US. So for Australian businesses, one of the biggest impediments to realizing business and investment opportunities in Asian region is lack of understanding about Asian capabilities. In particular, which capabilities are critical to business success and how prevalent they are in workforce. So some of the data points are on the screen, and considerably the Asian capability is higher in some of the groups, but there are certain groups, more than half, I would say, where there is some capability, very little or none. So even when we look around and teams we work in, there are a lot of people from culturally diverse backgrounds. Many are migrants or on work visa or permanent visas. Some are on temporary visas as well. So in terms of cultural intelligence, I want to ask this question to Sangeeta. What are the 3 things leaders can do to harness cultural intelligence within their teams?
Thanks, Jalpa, and hi, everybody. I'm really thrilled to be here. So before I kick off into my answer straight away, I just want to say I'm really excited to be here and be celebrating this important cause, Break the Bias, on International Women's Day with ISACA. Thanks for having us here. Look, when it comes to cultural intelligence, before I jump into answers, I think it's just really important to understand really simply what cultural intelligence means, right? And it really means the ability to work in a multicultural context. That's as simple as it gets. And the reasons for this are, why cultural intelligence is coming to the forefront quite a bit now. Like Jalpa outlined, we've got a big population of multicultural Australia, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger with the level of migration that is happening to this country. And I suppose in corporate Australia, we've spoken a lot about emotional intelligence, in a sense, just, what emotional intelligence is, how you connect with people on an emotional level, and, work better in that context. So think of cultural intelligence just as an extension of that, of emotional intelligence. And so, just as emotional intelligence brings about trust, cohesion, better communication between people, that's exactly the same thing that will happen when cultural intelligence between teams specifically increases. And that's why I'm a big advocate for cultural intelligence within teams, and especially within corporate Australia. Now, if I was to say what are the 3 things leaders could do to foster cultural intelligence, I wouldn't just limit it to leadership. I would extend it out to anybody and everybody who works in multicultural teams. The first one I would say is curiosity, right? So just get curious about the people who are around you. You could have 10 people in your team, you could have 20, you could have people that are sitting in the same city as you are, or sitting in different countries altogether. It's really about recognizing who is in your team from a cultural lens, and understanding, you may say, oh, I've got 3 people from India, I've got 3 people from, China, I've got 2 from Vietnam, I've got 1 from the USA, 1 from Europe, or, say specifically Greece or Spain or wherever it may be. It's really about looking deeper than that. It's really about understanding. So, okay, you're from India, but where in India are you from? Because India is such a vast country, everything is so different there. Similarly for, China or US or Spain, all the examples that I gave you, there is more depth, there is more layers to this than just saying, oh, I know which country you're from, but understanding them beyond just that. So for example, Diwali is a festival that's celebrated in India. And for me, Diwali is one of my favorite festivals. But in Australia, I've lived and worked here for like 13 years. And in Australia, that day just comes and goes by. We're all working on that day, right? But Christmas, on the other hand, is a big celebration. Everyone's on leave, everyone's celebrating it. And don't get me wrong, I love celebrating Christmas. But hey, for Diwali, if I could have somebody in my team wish me, if I had my whole team wish me happy Diwali, how cool would that be? Even if I'm working the whole day, it just makes you feel special. And it increases your desire to be working in that team. And so, it's little things like that. So get curious about the people who are around you. What festivals do they celebrate? Where do they come from, really? And the easiest way to do that is ask the right questions. Just ask, and they will tell you. The second one that I would like to sort of say is commonality. People who come from, certain geographic locations have a common upbringing, a common cultural traditional traits. So look for these common traits. For example, I can say I'm from India, so I can tell you that, there's a lot of people who are hardworking. The loyalty is a big thing in India, staying loyal to the company you work for or to the boss you work for. Harness those sort of commonalities, understand who's in the team and what is really their individual work ethic. We talk about business culture, we talk about culture of the company, but what is the culture of this person? What is their own values? And if you can align the work that they do and, give them the work that they do along to their value system, you will see they will flourish. And in return, that really flourishes your team and, the bottom line of the company at the end of the day, right? And the third piece that I would like to say is community. I talk about community because, I'm building Australian professionals of color as a community, but community really breeds inclusivity. The most recent example I can give you is from cricket. When Australia won the Ashes and Pat Cummins, right at the end during the celebrations, he paused the champagne celebrations just so that Khwaja, who's a Muslim, could come in and join in respect of his cultural sort of alignment, right? So he showed cultural intelligence in that moment in being able to get somebody on into partying together as a team and not being excluded out of it. So inclusivity is such a big piece as well. And so as you foster the sense of community within your teams, the sense of inclusivity also becomes sort of, it just becomes a non-negotiable. It becomes, something that's part of the whole team. And so these are the 3 sort of things I would say, the 3 C's, I suppose: curiosity, commonality, and community.
That's great, Sangeeta. Thank you so much. And I love the example of Pat Cummins and Khwaja. And it's like, it came naturally. So, it's not imposed on anyone.
Yeah.
And you rightly mentioned that the traits of multicultural people, like they are loyal, they are hardworking, and they have a drive for, their career and doing something great. So, Naishad, I want to turn to you and ask you, how can people with culturally diverse background use their cultural values as their strengths, because they can be subject to exploitation at times for those same values as well.
Absolutely, Jalpa. Thank you for having me. I think piggyback what Sangeeta said, what leaders can do to make organization more culturally aware or culturally intelligent. I think it's also equally a responsibility of an individual to demonstrate the cultural awareness and cultural intelligence in workplaces. I think we coming from first generation migrant, as both of you are, we got to use cultural awareness as a strength rather than as a weakness. The kind of most of the people that I've worked with, and obviously Sangeeta, Jalpa, and a lot of other people who are on the webinar right now, you would have traveled across the world. You would have worked in US to Mexico to Middle East to Africa to Europe to many other places. But when we come to Australia, we don't really communicate that cultural awareness in our interviews or in our meetings. We just feel that everybody would have done that. There's nothing special about it. I think we got to try to treat that cultural awareness special, because it is incredibly special. If you worked in Middle East with 5 different cultures, even within Middle East, there might be 5 different subcultures. And if you're able to do it, you got to demonstrate it in some way that you do possess that kind of awareness and that amount of sensitivity to hold conversation, to lead a team, to manage team. And I think that's incredibly important. As we move more into the Asian engagement, obviously this, by the end of this year, probably India is going to sign a free trade agreement with Australia. That's going to mean that there's lots and lots of business opportunity will arise. But if I'm just not restrict the conversation to subcontinent, I think it is becoming very important for employers to find a culturally fit person within the team, and in order for you to become more culturally fit within an organization, you got to demonstrate that. You got to be vocal about your experiences. Don't hide those experiences on the 3rd page of the resume that you've done some amazing work with multicultural teams. That's what I would believe. And to cite an example of a couple of examples, example is of a project engineer started to work with a small-time engineering company, and soon he started to see how he can use his awareness of subcontinental market to really build the business in subcontinent. And he was sent overseas few times, and he really started that business over there. So that just demonstrates that how one person can leverage off their experiences, just not getting first job, but also to gain some momentum in their career. Second example is somebody who worked in Africa, and he's now living in regional New South Wales, and he built his business. He pursued his company to start exporting those automobile products in Africa, and because of his knowledge around those African continent, he was able to not only get the first orders or first breakthrough, but he was able to have a sustainable business, which would not have been possible if they did not have somebody with that amount of experience. So point is that I think we as a person of color, we got to treat our knowledge, our multicultural experience as a point of strength rather than a point of weakness.
Thank you, Naishad. And I really like how you gave real life examples. I'm sure a lot of people who have joined today can also relate to some of them. And so men and women from multicultural background is one thing. And then tying it back to the theme of International Women's Day, I want to take you to a topic around women of color. And this one is close to home for me as well, because I want to bring forward a topic about intersectionality. So it's in context of interconnected nature of social categorization, such as, gender for women. And then when you bring in the mix, the race or the ethnicity, the given individual or group can be regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of disadvantages or discriminations. So let me share the next slide. I have some statistics there. All right, so when women enter in workplace, they are in good proportion compared to men. But as they progress through their career in senior leadership roles, as you can see, the numbers just go down so much. And by the time they reach the CEO level or C-suite, it's merely 4% of women of color. This is just very small number. And I wonder if these outcomes can be tied to some of the experiences women are having. Like some women I work with or share feedback, they have shared that some of the feedback they receive is like, you sound like a little girl, but too mellow, or you will have hard time dealing with strong personalities in the team. So what do you have to say about this, Naishad? If I turn to you, what advice would you give to these women receiving this kind of vague and unhelpful feedback, non-specific?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would do is to think about whether that organization is really for you or not, right? If you're consistently getting that demeaning feedback, you've got to really consider the whole thing. But I think, even in the larger context of the things, I think we have seen today, there was a report, or there's an initiative started by the Australian of the Year talking about the equality, justice, I forgot the safety. And there's right now commentary going on about that even in that group of women, the person of color is completely missing. So you can see that it's just not organization, but it's also quite a societal issue that we are dealing with. So there are, I think if somebody comes to me as a career practitioner and say, what do I do? I think there are the 4 things that I could say, without getting into a lot of, obviously, in individual circumstances would change based on that, the advice would change. But I think one of the things is seeking a professional help. If you're getting same feedback every time you apply for a role, or every time you seek a promotion, every time you seek a leadership role, think about whether can you go out and speak to a career practitioner or a leadership practitioner to really get a sense of where you are really standing right now, and what are some of the things that is hindering your growth. Because it's very important to get a real, honest and brutal feedback on where you stand right now, because there's no point, right? I can think in my head that, I can watch a YouTube video, say I can run a half marathon. What's wrong? 21 kilometers, nothing else, right? But in reality, I can barely run 200 meters, right? I got to know that. So that's why it's external help is incredibly important. Secondly is, I know mentoring is huge in corporate. There are sponsors that would say, you know what, I'll take you under my wings and I'll teach you the tricks of the trade and everything else. But I think thinking of even getting a mentor completely outside of your industry could also be useful. It just brings new and sometimes, a very unique perspective to the situation. I can cite an example of my son's cricket coach. And whenever I speak to him, he brings some equipments to help my son play better cricket. And I said, where do you find it? And I said, and he said that, Nishad, I watch a lot of baseball, and there's some correlation that I find, and I use those training equipments in context of cricket, which was fantastic because there's no other equipment available. But what I want to say is that he was able to bring that perspective because he is exposed to, he's going out and exposing himself to think about different sports and how he can bring that to the current training context. Third is, there is a kind of a very movement going on about designing life and designing careers. Is quite a phenomenal movement going on. And one of the things that I ask people to do is to create your future self. But creating the future self is not enough. You got to validate that. So as Sangeeta, she coaches many early entrepreneurs, and Sangeeta would say, look, go out and test out the idea, whether this is feasible or not. In your head, you might think, oh, I can create this app and it's going to have 1 million download. But if you go out and talk to people, they're saying, oh, I don't want to buy this, right? So, whether whichever the self that you're creating, is it validated or not? So validate that idea of leadership or promotion or transition. The fourth, I would say, is to take a real honest skill audit. Now, skills can be divided into two ones. One is what we call a vocational skills. That means, can you perform in the job or not? And the other one is what we call essential skills. I don't say soft skills, essential skills. And more or less, the essential skills are the trump card that you have, not the technical skills as much. So what can you do to really harness on those essential skills? Whether can you do a side project, whether can you put your hand up to do a mentoring to someone, whether you can, like what Jalpa you do is a remarkable side project that you're doing, but that's, you don't know how that is going to shape, but eventually this will all come together to shape that narrative about you. So these are the four things I would say: seek professional help, seek a mentor outside of your industry. Fourth is validate your future self. And the fourth is the audit. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Naisha. That's great advice. And yeah, thank you for appreciation. Thank you for appreciating my work as well. So I want to ask Sangeeta, you started as a grad and you moved up the ladder in corporate. So have you had some of these unhelpful or vague feedback, and how did you turn it around?
Have I? Oh my God, haven't we all? Feedback comes in from all directions when you're working in corporate Australia. And look, I mean, there's no right or wrong way. You will learn your way to you learn on your way how to deal with this feedback. But if I can say something from my experience, just looking at the statistics that are in here, that are on the screen here, it's a shame, just to see that little bottom sort of purple line that goes really thin at the top, right? And this is the reality, because in my most senior position that I was in my corporate job before I left to start my own business, I think it was very evident. One day I was sitting at the leadership table, and I was on the leadership table with 7 other people, and everybody around me was a person not of color. Right? And I was the only first generation migrant sitting on that table. Then I looked at the leadership chain that is between me and the CEO of the company, and there were 4 levels between me and the CEO of the company, and every role between me and the CEO was occupied by a person, a white male. Right? So the statistics that you show there are such a reality. And look, you could say it could be, there's really no visibility of, any person of color between me and the CEO, and that could be a demotivator for a lot of people. People may not know, okay, so what's the next step for me? How do I really navigate this 4 level upwards, right? How do I get there? And things like that. Now, did I think of all these things when I was really early on in my career? Not at all. When we start our careers, or when we migrate to new countries, or when we start something new, the excitement of getting it done, or doing it is the piece. And for me, it was pretty much the same. It wasn't until I got into the senior levels that I really couldn't find any relatable, I suppose, references around me, in a sense, right? So for me, I think in terms of unhelpful feedback, did unhelpful feedback happen along the way as I walked up the corporate ladder? 100%. Everybody gets unhelpful feedback, but the reality is you've got to evaluate, is that feedback really unhelpful or not? So for me, for example, once somebody told me, this is the first time I remember I got very, very bad feedback on my work. I was not used to it. I'm a high achiever. I love getting things done. And for me to get unhelpful feedback for the first time was a shock, right? And it literally made me angry. And like Naisha said, the person who came to my rescue was, a mentor, But the fact is that you have to take that step. You have to talk to a mentor. You have to talk to somebody when that happens. And for me, I was really angry, and I was like, how can this happen to me? And for me, it was really like, okay, I need to talk to someone. And I picked my mentor, and she said one thing to me that really stuck with me, right? My mentor was a leading industry professional. She had 20 years of experience on me. So obviously, she was somebody I really looked up to. And she said one thing. She said, hey, Sangeeta, if I had stopped doing what I'm doing just because people gave me negative feedback, I wouldn't be here today. And that one thing stuck with me, right? So it's really how you react to the negative feedback that matters. The feedback in itself, I'm not saying it's not valid or you should completely ignore it, but the first thing is check your reactions, check your emotions. A lot of times we just react based on emotions rather than looking at the actual logical side of it. The second thing is, once you've gotten rid of your emotions and you can just take the feedback for what it is, feedback, think about, is this feedback something you've got over time, from different people as well? So is there a consensus among different people giving you similar feedback? And if there is, then, about time you do something about it. And if there isn't, and you feel like the feedback is really coming from a different place, it's not really meant to help you grow or, improve yourself. And the other thing that I really like doing is fact checking, right? So just check if it's factual, if the feedback is factual, because guess what? The other person giving you feedback is also a human being and has emotions, and the feedback can come from many places. I've had these instances before. I've had a manager tell me before, like, hey, Sangeeta, this was my first ever role as a skip line manager. And I had my manager come within 1 month of my role and tell me, your team leaders don't respect you. They don't like you. And for me, that was strange because, I've been having daily conversations with my direct reports, and I knew our camaraderie and I knew what, the relationship we had. And so the question I asked was, have they told you this themselves? Like, I'm shocked, but have they told you this themselves? And then she was like, oh, no, but it's a feeling I have. So it's really things like that. Like, people can have feelings about things, people can have emotions about things, and they come from many places, right? But ask for a fact check. And when I asked that question, she literally said, I will go have a word with them, and I will set up time to talk to them and find out. So there's ways to deal with this, but really the three things are, talk to somebody, get your emotions out of the way, really just see if it's common or not, and fact check it. That's really important.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Yeah, that's a great advice, and I'm going to remember that and use that in my career. Thank you. So some of the statistics around how we can get more women in higher leadership roles. And when the census came out last year, it said if we keep going at the rate we are, then we will be in 2086 when we'll have 40% of women CEO in Australian market, Australian corporate. So that's just very, very slow. I think that's kind of good segue to the next topic I want to discuss, is that when people of color or people from multicultural background, they do, because they're hardworking, they have drive, they do achieve success in their career over the time. And once they reach certain stage in their career, they can start helping others. And Sangeeta, I remember talking to you a couple of weeks ago, and you used one example that I want you to share with everyone here today. Like, once you have reached at a certain point in your career, do you want to start helping others? Is there a right time that someone can start helping others?
Yeah, great question. I think, as I've matured in my career journey, I suppose I reflect back on a lot of this, and I think about, people who've helped me on my journey, but also I find a lot of satisfaction in helping others. But it's a concept of paid forward. And I think, Jalpa, you do this already, right? You pay things forward by helping other women in cybersecurity and, working with, with organizations that are really close to your heart. But I think the whole piece around this, the example that I'll share that I speak to you about as well often is, it's about like when you've started a journey, no matter how many years you're in, if you're 2 years in, 3 years in, 10 years in, you're actually sitting somewhere on top of a mountain, right? Let's say you're climbing a mountain, you're sitting at the top of a mountain. when you look down, you can actually see there are other people trying to climb that same mountain. And it's always true. There's always going to be people wanting to climb the mountain that you've climbed already. Whether it's new migrants coming into Australia, whether it's people starting, as in grad positions or internship positions in your company, every mountain has a base and people start at the base, and you could have sort of climbed that mountain, even if you've not reached the top, even if you're in the middle somewhere. When you turn and look around, there will be people who are crowding at the base. Now, you could sit there and just watch them and see if they, can make it. Some people will make it, some people will fall off, and, you can just sit there and watch the show. Or you can actually throw them the rope, right? You can throw them a rope and say, hey, get up faster. I know the pitfalls because I've come this route and I know what the pitfalls are. I can show you where not to fall. Here's a rope and I'll pull you up. And I think that's a great way of, like we said, increasing representation, whether it's, women of color up at the top of the mountain, whether it is other people of color, whether it is just people from different walks of life, just anybody who needs help, right? There's no harm in you throwing the rope down for other people and pulling them up the mountain faster than you climbed it. Because you know what? Even if they go up before you do, they will pull you up at some point as well. So there's always a reciprocal sort of energy happening around us. And if you just have to look in your own career, think about people who've stood by you. Think about people who've thrown you the rope. There would have always been someone who has. Even if you feel like 99% of the world was against you in most of your life, there will be that one person who stood behind you, who helped you, who pushed you up, or who pulled you up with a rope. And I don't think there's a right time or a wrong time. I think for me, when it clicked for me really was when I was helping somebody who was like just the next level down from me in the organization, right? I was a new entrant into this team. I just started working in this team, and I could see this lady who was really, she was really sad. And one day I just invited her for coffee and I had the chat with her, and she broke down. She said, I've been in this team for 2 years. Nobody's really asked me how I feel about being here. And when I spoke to her, what I discovered is she had actually migrated from New Zealand to Australia a couple of years ago. And in New Zealand, she was here, right? She was a manager, she was managing large teams. But when she came into Australia, and like many of us we have to start at a position that is different from where we were in the countries that we came from, and usually it's at a lower level. And so she was doing something that was at a much lower level than her capacity, than her potential. And it was really disheartening because the feedback she was getting from the team was also very negative. And so, all I said to her was, why don't you try a couple of things? I just gave her a quick tip of, I've tried this before, it's worked for me, see if it works for you. She went away and worked for her. She came back 2 weeks later and she's like, we caught up for another coffee. And she's like, oh my God, that worked. And I just kept sort of helping her by giving her a few tips. And because I was in the team, I could watch her. And from somebody who was really scared, crying, unsure of their career path back then, to maybe like 5 years from now, it was just about 5 or 6 years. She's at a different level. She's at a senior manager level now. She manages large teams. She has immense confidence. She's moved organizations in the meantime as well. But, she's doing amazingly well for herself. And all it took was, just somebody to have faith in you and show you that you can do it. So no, it's never too early or never too late to throw the rope to somebody. Just, throw the rope and see how they flourish. You will be amazed at what you can do by just helping somebody a little bit.
Thank you, Sangeeta. And the rope analogy is great. And it just reminds me of the ladder analogy that John C. Maxwell has used in his book, Leadership. And that's the reason why I wanted you to share your real life example with everyone, because what he talks about in his book is these 4 stages in a leader's career that they can use to, maximize their leadership potential. So starting with climbing the ladder. So when you start your career, you are kind of, on your own ladder, trying to climb up and seeking people's help, of course, but it's all about climbing. And then at some stage, you do feel like you can help others. You can see others trying to climb up. And if you're not on that top 10%, then maybe give others chance, help them, hold the ladder for them. So that's ladder holding stage. And then he talks about the ladder extending stage, where It comes a stage where you can get help from coaches and mentors, and they can help you maximize, your career potential by extending the ladder. And then the last stage he talks about is ladder building. So once you have accomplished career and feel like you have achieved a lot, and there's now time to give back, and you can start teaching people how to build their own ladder. So that's when he talks about the gain of leadership actually multiplies, not just doubles or something like that. So that's a great analogy of throwing rope. It's very similar as well. And I want to ask Naishad about, there can be help available. There are coaches and mentors available today, but there's also one person should be, able to receive. If someone's not ready to receive help or seek help, then no matter of, ladder building or extending is going to help them. So what is your advice to someone who is starting in their career or ready for that next role? And how can they look out for this kind of, someone holding the ladder for them or extending ladder?
Yeah, look, I come from the other, side of the fence. So my view is that, your career is your own responsibility, no one else's responsibility. And I think it is becoming very evident, before COVID or even in the post-COVID world, that the organizations are, they themselves are kind of very unpredictable. Not all of them. Obviously Zoom is not one of them, or Canva is not one of them, but there are many companies who are in very uncharted waters. They don't know the realities of the business. There are conflicts going on, in various parts of the world. So we live in a kind of a very volatile environment, although Australia is quite insulated from them, but we do, live in this environment. And I think it is becoming very important for individual to realize that I have to take control of my career. No one else is going to do it. Although organizations would want to invest into your training, development, to create pathways for you, but it's not organization's responsibility. That means that I have to earn the respect and trust of those people who want to throw the rope. I don't want to wait there and say, someone like Sangeeta would come on, to me and say, Naishad, what's wrong? Why you're not moving, right? I don't want to wait for that to happen. I want to make it happen. That means that if, I don't know whether Sangeeta, Jalpa, or John, Mary, whosoever is there, I want to make sure that I'm worthy enough that they would come to me and say, what help do you need? Let's work with you. I think that's a place to come from, which is of more power rather than expectations, because the other world will be expectations. I'll give you the example of a client many years back, and he's knew he was a general manager in a nationalized bank in India, came here not getting anywhere, started to get interviews for a second IC role in a branch in a bank here. And then he said, Naishad, I didn't get it. And I said, okay, what happened? He said, I'm discriminated against. And I said, okay, why did you decide? What did they tell you? No, my friends told me that I would have been discriminated against. I said, that's good. Look, that's one way of thinking about it. Okay, I'm not going to argue with it. Another way to think about it is that consider that as one feedback, one option, not the whole option. What you could do better in the next time. And thinking from that perspective, what could I do better? Where could I improve? Because that's a place to come from. I can cite an example as a parent. If my son comes to me or my daughter comes to me and say, Dad, this is what's happening. What am I going to tell him or her? I'm going to say, look, do what you can. That means that you got to improve on it. You're not reliant on what the opposition team in a sports context would do. You got to focus on what you can control and what you can change. And I think that's incredibly important. So to win the trust and respect of others, that means, Jalpa, is that I have to be curious, going back to what Sangeeta said, curiosity. Curiosity is a very powerful trait. I have to be curious about, hang on, this person, scaled this career so quickly. I'm just curious. I don't want to follow the same path, but I'm just curious. Sangeeta, tell me, how did you come here as an international student and rose to this senior management in such a rapid space? I am just curious to know. The more that I demonstrate this curiosity and genuine intent, people will be ready to share their stories. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm just, interested in learning from people's stories and their insights and the nuances. Because if I ask Sangeeta that, can you tell me 10 things that you've done which has made a difference? Sangeeta will say, I don't know 10 things. I must have done 100 small things. I can't really pinpoint that. So you can't figure out someone's, kind of secret of success by spending 5 minutes with them. It takes layers and layers and layers of that. But you need to be there to listen to that. I like what Stephen Covey says in his, the 7 habits of highly effective people. He says that one of the habits that we could all develop, which is says seek first to understand and then to be understood. That means in the context of building relationship, you want to go there to understand people's story rather than say, you know what, nobody has asked me anything, but here you go. Okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what has happened with me. So I think seek to really first understand their stories. And the more that you listen powerfully, the more people are interested in talking with you. I was listening to Eddie McGuire today in the morning when he was talking about Shane Warne. And he said Shane Warne had this unique ability. Shane Warne could tell stories until the cows come home. Right? Some amazing stories, right? So Shane would come to a party, to a social function, and he would not tell anything. He's just interested in you. He makes you feel special. And that's a gift. That's a gift. So the more that you make other people feel special, from a genuine point of view, by the way, not because, hey, I can get Sangeeta's network access and I can do this with it and everything else. You're not kind of selling anything. Right? You're just genuinely interested in. So the more conversation that you have like this with very wide-ranging people within the organization, outside of the organization, the more you become aware of what it takes to get to the next step. What can I do next? How can I really, what is missing in me? What can I improve on? And I think that's incredibly important. You are kind of creating your own ladder here, right? Because everyone's career pathways are very different, even though they've studied the same thing, they worked in the same organization, but where they will end up would be completely different. So that's what I would think, having a sense of curiosity, listening to other people's career stories, and then building on that is incredibly useful.
Yeah, 100% Naishad. Thank you for sharing that, and I agree with you there. So yeah, I have also heard about this concept where if you rely on the existing network that you have, the people that you directly know already, their view would be very similar to what yours is. So you rightly said about just building conversations, and that will lead you to amazing outcomes that you don't even know of, because that's when you will get to hear from other people whose perspective might be different, and you don't know that yet, right? So thank you for that. And I think we are coming towards the end of this panel discussion, so let me take some of the questions that have been posted. So the first one is for Naishad. It says, would you say essential skills are more important than work skills, or both are important? Do you think essential skills support or supplement work skills, certifications, degrees, etc.?
I think it complements. Let me put it this way. I don't know. I'm going to give you a very example that I really like to give. Okay. I'm from India, and I'll give you an example of Indian classic arranged marriages, right? So let's say a bride, prospective boy goes to the girl's house, girls comes to the boy's house to check out, right? Now, what the parents are thinking is that whether this boy can fit into our family or not, whether this person earns $10,000 less doesn't matter. Or from the other side, they are thinking whether this girl we are bringing into our family, whether she will bring the family together or divide the family. That's what they are continuously concerned about, is the cultural knowledge, is the cultural fit, is the other skills, not the technical skills, whether whether she can cook butter chicken or not, right? That can be taught. The family recipe can be taught, but the other aspects cannot be taught. That means more and more organizations are looking for people who are superior in their essential skills, because the other aspects, I can send you to a TAFE, I can send you to any institute to go and do a 2 months course, right? It's not difficult to gain technical skills, but if there are two candidates running for a promotion or a leadership or any job, I think the soft skills or essential skills, in my view, would trump the technical skills.
Yeah, great answer, Naishad. And I'll just ask Sangeeta as well if you share similar thoughts, or would you like to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, essential skills, like Nashad said, they can't be taught. They're something that you learn over time through your experiences. And so the more you can, the way to develop your essential skills, I suppose, would really be to do more of, different experiences, just get different experiences. When people say think out of the box, right? What is the box? It's very unclear. The box for me is very different for the box for Naishad, the box for Jalpa. So it's really about understanding, thinking outside the box is about having different experiences. So deliberately put yourself in places where you can learn things, learn from people, learn from situations, learn from kicking yourself outside your comfort zone. So yeah, absolutely. Essential skills, you develop them over time, and those are the ones that will get you roles that you want in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't agree more. So the next question is for Sangeeta, and I think you have already answered it in a way. So the question goes, have you had mentors and coaches, and how they have helped you in your career? And the second part of the question goes, have you ever got challenging feedbacks given to you? So I think you kind of already answered that before. So maybe let me twist the question to you a little bit. How do you choose coach or mentor? Because there seems to be a lot more options today than maybe 10 years ago to have mentors and coaches. So how do you go about choosing one?
Yeah, look, I mean, the easiest answer to that is find somebody who's done the things that you want to do. Who's already walked the path that you want to walk. There's lots, you're right, there are coaches and mentors out there. I wouldn't say there are lots, but there are mentors and coaches out there. But how do you discern which is the right one for you or the right fit? I think first is, have they done what you want to do? So for example, you want to start a business, have they started a business? Have they experienced all the pitfalls, right? Or maybe you want to start climbing the corporate ladder in a particular sort of industry, find somebody who's done it in that industry. And the second thing that I would encourage is, look not just for one mentor or one coach. I mean, I say this about marriage, right? It's like, when you marry one person, you're expecting that one person to fulfill for the rest of your life all your desires. It is a bit of an impossible task, but it's the same with coaches and mentors, right? Be specific about what you want out of your coach or mentor. Don't really say, okay, I've got a mentor now, they're going to teach me everything under the sun. No, they're not. And really, honestly, they don't have the time to either. So be really specific and clear as to what you want from your coach or mentor. And if you want 3 or 4 different objectives that you want to achieve, talk to your mentor, see if they can help you with them. If they can't, you might have to find 1 or 2 different ones. So be open to that as well. Finding the right fit is all about really specificity and finding someone who's done it already.
Yeah, great advice, Sangeeta. Thank you. Naishad, do you want to add anything to that?
I can reflect on, I don't know, I listened to an author speak about, he was collaborating with another author, and he was asked to go and meet this supremely talented another author in management consulting or something, and he went and spent the whole weekend with him, because what he wanted to get is that, why do you do what you do? I want to understand you a bit better, because writing is easy, but this connection is extremely important for me. And so if you think about it, that a lot of the people's methodology really excite you, right? It's the way that they arrive at a conclusion excites you. So you got to try to find out what's the methodology that they use. How do they approach the problems that you are facing, right? And try to get that sense of that, because that is what, in my view, is the most important aspect. Because I could get a certification from an international body and everything else, which doesn't really makes me competent, right? It's like you get a driver's license, doesn't make you a competent driver. So that's what's required, is to, in my view, I would go and speak to the person, do a trial session, and figure out whether do we really are we aligned or not on this aspect, and how do you approach problem? Because sometimes, like, I'm a bit eccentric in my views, right? So I want somebody who's kind of similar, who can coach me, right? I don't want somebody who's got a method written down 1 to 10 steps. I think I will probably forget, and I will not like that. I want people who have got very divergent thinking to bring to help me out. So that's what I would suggest you to kind of figure out their story and how do you align with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there, Naisha. Then also, you both covered around how to choose coaches and about mentoring. When I first started looking for mentor like 5 years ago, I used to send message to people and ask, would you be my mentor? And now over the time, I have understood how wrong I was. You can't just go to someone and say, would you be my mentor? That like, they might just get frightened by the thought of it. Like, how can I mentor you? I'm not even sure. But now over the years, I have learned that it's not like, you don't have to call it officially mentoring or mentorship. You can just be curious and ask questions. And that's how, when someone starts, sharing their point of view, they become your mentor. And you, as you build relationship, you would both know how much that mentorship has added over the time. So thank you both very much, Sangeeta and Naisha. I think we have come to the end of the time for this session. So let me just share some last minutes here. So we would like to acknowledge the book sponsors for this event. So Holy Ransom is one of them, and she has kindly donated her author of the Leading Edge book to us. And also, we would like to thank Craig Ford, who has also shared his books for gifts in this session. And the next session is in a few minutes, and the registration is still open. So if you haven't yet, you can register and be there. So lastly, I want to thank everyone who has joined today, take out their precious time and listen to us today. I hope you have all got something out of this. And just lastly, Sangeeta, if there are any further questions, how can people reach out to APOC?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think you can see our details on the screen here, our contact details. We do have a community on LinkedIn that we often post on LinkedIn, and we'll let you know what's coming up. You can email us, apoc@apoc.community. And we've got a Facebook group, which is where a lot of the action actually happens. So, we have fortnightly live sessions that happen. We have mentoring sessions. So we're kicking off a first mentoring session that is happening, in a week's time, in a week or two's time. We've got events that happen. So, and this is really a community piece, and it's for people of color and people who support people of color as well. So, feel free to join us in those sessions. They're all mostly free events, and it's really about helping the community and paying it forward. So you can reach us on any of these areas, and also LinkedIn. I mean, you can stalk Naisha, you can come join me on my LinkedIn profile. We talk a lot about these things over there as well. So we'd love to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sangeeta and Naisha, once again. And thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Jalpa. Thanks,
Okay.
Isaka.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.